Opportunity to be here, and thank you, Mr. Bialek, thank you for being here. What year did you start at the Fed?
2011.
All right. Between 8, 9, and 10, how many bank failures were there in the country? Do you know?
Between 8, 9,
2008,
and 10?
2009.
Oh, before I got there?
Yeah.
I can't give you an exact number, sir.
Once you got there, would you agree that if there's a bank failure, that the Federal Reserve probably has some responsibility?
If it's a bank that they supervise or regulate, sure.
So in 2008, 2009, 2010, there were banks that the Federal Reserve was responsible for that failed, right?
Yes.
So since you've been there, have you done any review of why those banks failed and any failures of the Federal Reserve?
My predecessor would have done those at the time,
But,
sure.
you haven't done any since you got there?
We have done, but I think there was one MLR a bunch of years ago, but nothing significant and nothing recent.
How many banks that the Federal Reserve was responsible for have failed since you've been there?
I'm sorry, how many?
How many banks have failed since you've been there?
Less than a handful, I think.
Okay. So let's say 6, if you think that's the right number?
That would be a guess. I'd really want to look into it and get you an exact number. I don't want to mislead the committee.
So of those, let's say it's 6, how many reports have you done that anybody was fired because they failed to do their job?
I can't answer that question. I don't know.
Does that mean none?
I can't answer. I don't know.
Do you know of any?
I'm not aware of any, no.
Okay. So as far as you know, of bank failures, of any report that you've done, no one's been fired?
None that I have heard of.
Okay. So with regard to the stock disclosure, right, that there was there's an accusation of insider trading. You've done some reports, but you haven't released that publicly yet, right? All of it.
Correct.
Has anyone been fired?
There are 2 matters that we've closed out. There are 3 matters that are still open, ongoing investigations.
Was anybody fired?
Not that I'm aware of. I don't know. I wouldn't necessarily know.
Okay. So why wouldn't you know?
Well, we provide our work and issue our reports, and the 2 reports that we issued, or the 1 report that we issued on the 2 investigations that we closed out, didn't have findings of wrongdoing. So I wouldn't expect there to be the kinds of actions that you're referring to.
Okay. All right. So I've been up here 4 years. For the first time since I've been up here, with that unsolicited, a federal employee wrote me a letter. Elizabeth, Senator Warren, me a letter saying you disliked our idea of having a presidential appointed supervisor election, or inspector general. All right. So first off, that surprised me. So first, did you tell Chairman Powell that you were doing this?
No, I did not.
Did he say anything to you after you did it?
No, he did not.
Did you talk to anybody at the Federal Reserve? You just did it completely on your own?
I did.
Okay. So you believe that you can adequately do your job when you report to the same people you're supposed to review?
Senator, as you may know, the concept of a DFEIG, Designated Federal Entity IG, of which I am one, there are about 30, almost half of the IG community, are IGs appointed by their agency heads. The others are the PAS, presidential appointees, subject to Senate confirmation. There are differences of view within the oversight community about whether the mere appointment authority of a DFEIG provides some question about their independence, because the person.
I mean, if Chairman Powell can fire you, you're going to go. Let me ask you a question. Have you done a review of any member of the Federal Reserve Board and ever said anybody on the Federal Reserve Board, anybody, has ever done anything wrong?
We have investigations going on all the time where we find wrongdoing. And if I can, Senator, we wind up deciding to do our investigations completely on our own without any input from anybody. Nobody has attempted to try to prevent us from doing any of our investigations. And the fact that the IG here can, along with all of the other DFE IGs, can be removed by their agency head is a part of the fabric of the community. Here at the Federal Reserve, there's an additional protection, if you will, if you believe this is a protection, that it isn't the Federal Reserve Board chair who can remove the IG. It's got to be based on a vote of 2/3, a supermajority of the entire
Can I ask you a
board.
question? Since you've been there, how many times has the chairman of the Federal Reserve proposed something at a board meeting and it didn't happen?
I can't answer that.
Yeah, probably not. So I ask one more question. So you suggested in there that you make $350,000 a year, and you suggested if we went back to the pay scale for the president-appointed inspector generals, we wouldn't get competent people. That's what you said in your letter. So does that mean that the inspector generals we have that are presidentially appointed, you don't think we're getting the competent people to do the job?
What I was referring to, Senator, in that letter was simply that the future, the eventual IG, should this position be converted into a PAS IG, would be making significantly less than the current arrangement is, and that puts them at a certain comparison vis-a-vis the rest of the Federal Reserve Board executive leadership, which the statute, the IG Act, set up as the appropriate pay scale for DFE IGs.
So if we get this legislation passed, all right, and the pay scale goes down to a little over 200,000, will you quit?
I honestly haven't made that choice or decision, haven't thought about it.
Okay. So, but just let me finish. No one, so think about it. There's 23,000 people, I think, that work at the Federal Reserve. There's not a report you've done since 2011 that you know of any person that's been fired. You don't remember, you don't have any, there's nobody at the Federal Reserve on the board that's ever done anything wrong. We don't have any information, good information on what happened on the stock trades. And you think that we should be happy that we don't have an independent, presidentially appointed inspector general? I mean, this doesn't make any sense. And this it's got a balance sheet of $8.6 trillion, and in the last 12 months, the balance sheet, the Federal Reserve has lost $500 billion. I mean, name another agency that has that big a balance sheet in the federal government.
If I can clarify something, Senator, when you were asking about what happens as a result of our audits and evaluations and bank failures, that is what I said I couldn't cite for you numbers of folks who have been fired. I did also say we conduct investigations all the time, and there have been people fired as a result of our investigations. That's a separate workload for us.
Can you get me a report? I have not found one person. If you go back to the 2008 financial crisis and you go to what's happened this year, I've never heard of one person at the Federal Reserve that lost their job. Clearly, these banks did the wrong thing, but somebody at the Federal Reserve that was responsible for these banks for supervision clearly did it wrong. And guess who pays for it? The average person in America pays for all this. These bailouts are ridiculous, and we've been doing it for decades, and it should stop. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Scott.